There seems to have been a mistake.
Patrons, what should the Gom Jabbar podcast do now?
They shall continue to make episodes about Dune.
Yeah, that's reasonable. The business of this meeting appears to have been concluded. It was easy. It's quick.
I don't think honestly, I want the priests to try and compete with us. Get fucked, priests.
Give us a Rakian priesthood. Come at us. I have a 2-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Welcome to Gom Jabbar, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. My name is Leo.
And my name's Abu.
Oh, and today on the show, sure, I'm glad this book isn't over. We are continuing to read Heretics of Dune.
How exciting. And folks, there's a bit of a wrinkle today.
Oh my God, love
because
wrinkles.
We are recording this episode live, exclusively for our patrons over on YouTube.
Oh, hot dog.
So throughout today's conversation, obviously we're going to be going through chapters 40, 41, and 42, getting into our takeaways, all that good book club stuff that you're used to. But we might also be responding to some live chat happening over on YouTube as well. So this is sort of a half live show, half regular podcast, but mostly regular podcast.
Yeah, probably mostly regular podcast. Well, let's take care of our housekeeping before we get too far into it. And as always, we have our spoiler warning up top. Today's episode will contain no spoilers, zilch, zero, few and far between spoilers beyond the pages and books we've covered thus far. So if you're caught up with all of our book club episodes, you're safe to listen today.
That's right. And of course, up top, a huge shout out to our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons. Daniel Dion, shouts to Daniel in the chat.
Hey.
Jonathan Lambert, Brad
Hey.
Hutchins,
Hey.
and a brand new Kwisatz Haderach level patron,
Hey.
Seth Redden Greer.
Dang, that's 3 names. What up, Seth?
I think it's 2. It's hyphenated.
Yeah, but whatever. I don't have a hyphen in my names. I don't know how it works.
Thank you all so much for truly being the bedrock upon which this show runs. Of course, that gratitude extends to all of our patrons at every level who help build that foundation that keeps this show running. We could not thank you enough.
And we literally couldn't do it without you. And hey, if you're listening and you're not able to be a monthly supporter on Patreon, of course, we do have a one-time tip link in the show notes. You can buy us a spiced coffee, complete with the spit portion.
That's right. We'll drink it. Don't think we won't.
We are thirsty.
Okay, housekeeping out of the way. Y'all know the game plan for these book club episodes. We will begin with a summary of today's reading. Then we'll dive deeper into a juicy takeaway about our boy Duncan motherfucking Idaho. And then we will wrap up by chomping down on some yummy spice morsels. So before we jump in, Leo, I know you're antsy to start betting Duncan Idaho.
I've been waiting.
But you
so
got to
many
wait
books.
like 60 seconds.
Oh,
Let's take a quick break. Don't go anywhere, dear listeners.
Okay.
We'll be right back, and we'll get into these chapters.
The suspense makes it feel better. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're ready to dive into some spicy chapters.
Woo!
Kicking off today's reading with chapter 40, good a place to start as any. In our first chapter today, we are joining the highest of stakes meetings. Folks, are you tired of 2 people in a room talking? I'm here to introduce to you a new product, 30 people in a room talking.
Hello.
Because everyone's here. We are on
30-some.
It's a 30. It's just a big old party, and everyone's got their socks off. We are at a penthouse on the top of Dar es Balat Museum, surrounded by relics of the God Emperor's life. And we are witnessing a meeting between the members of Odrade's tenuous alliance, which includes the Sisterhood, Taraz is here, Hot Dog, the Tleilaxu, Waff is here with a bunch of face dancers, crazy, and the priesthood, the Rakian priesthood. Now, the priests are enraged. They want the face dancer Tuik to be replaced. They're like, nah, you know what? We're not cool with this. Get him the fuck out of here. What are we doing? Tuik is confused and indignant. He's like, what do you mean? I'm Tuik. Good old Tuik. We all hung out for years. Remember the shots? That was me. His friend Tuik.
Right.
And both the Tleilaxu and the Sisterhood are poised on the knife's edge, ready for, at any moment, violence or peace. I mean, really, it's like it could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, everyone is suspicious. This is a universe of plans within plans. Everyone's trying to suss out everyone else's plans. But it is clear throughout this meeting how masterfully the Bene Gesserit are truly pulling the strings. They are in charge by a margin, and it's pretty wild to see.
Very much so.
Now, in one of the juiciest moments of the meeting, it is revealed to Waff that he has completely lost control of the face dancer who is playing the part of High Priest Tuik, which is fucking crazy. Tuik's lost in the sauce, man. He's Daniel Day-Lewis. He's like, no, I am Abraham Lincoln. I don't know what you're talking about. He is fully bought in.
Yeah.
And something I missed on my first read through is actually Terraz's thought following that. Waff, quote, had not extended the discovery in here to what might be happening with his mimics among Ixians and fish speakers.
Wild.
Waff had more shocks coming, end quote. Which is crazy.
Crazy. They pushed out that Face Dancer 2.0 update to all their servers.
Yeah.
And they're about to get fucking Skynetted by all of these face dancers actually believing they are the people they're mimicking.
Yeah.
The implications are crazy.
It's crazy. And the other thing is, like, we started this book kind of realizing, this is really a universe poised between the Bene Tleilax and the Bene Gesserit. But now it seems like the Bene Tleilax did too well and now have just lost all of their chips.
Yeah. Nothing makes it more clear than this chapter in the book that Waff and the Bene Gesserit as a whole have bit off more than they can chew.
Yeah.
I think this is the chapter where, at least to me, it becomes abundantly clear that's the case.
Yeah. 1,000%. It's like everyone's got plans within plans, but there is the like Trader Joe's plans within plans, and then there's like the good stuff, you know? And the Bene Gesserit have the good stuff. The Tleilaxu have the one that's like 30% better for your heart or whatever the fuck, and $20 more. Ugh, terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Tell us how you really feel about Trader Joe's.
Yeah, I've been there once or twice. Now, Tuik, his claim to authenticity is sowing a ton of confusion and doubt within the priests.
This is so funny.
Because they were all told, they're just fucking guys. Like, they're just guys doing their best. They were told, hey, by the way, your high priest is dead and now he's a face dancer. But now their face dancer high priest is like, what are you talking about? John, you remember I was at your daughter's I was at your daughter's bat mitzvah. Like, where I don't know.
From the window to the wall.
From the
Come on,
sweat
my
drop.
guy.
Shots. That was me, dude.
You and me together.
We were doing so many body shit. I drank tequila out of your belly button, John. And John's like, I mean, I didn't want you to say that in front of all these people. Taraz was like, whoa.
I do remember that night, but like you didn't have to spell it out so clearly for everyone in the room.
It's like, Shiana, cover your ears. It's a lot. So they're confused because naturally the face dancer's throwing all this shit off. And Odrade reassures Tuik. She's like, all right, I mean, if you're going to just give me the check in this chessboard, I'll take it. Hey, Tuik, we back your continued leadership. I don't know what this fucking Waff dude is talking about. You're great. You're good.
Nice.
Way to go. And then basically tells the rest of the leadership, yeah, I guess we're wrong because Waff has told us. And I don't know, Waff seems kind of stupid, doesn't he?
Whoops.
And all the humans are like, yeah, I guess he is. All the priests are like, yeah, he does seem pretty stupid. To fully seal the deal with the priests, to kind of set this confusion to rest, Shiana steps forward. Holy child Shiana herself steps forward and says, yeah, what Odrade said. And everything basically settles. But kind of the incredible part of this play is that on the tail end of it, we now have a Tleilaxu problem like a problematic Tleilaxu face dancer who is now a Bene Gesserit servant. Like it's kind of an incredible inversion of power dynamics here.
Yeah.
Quote, they could see the acceptance and understanding in him. He had become a creature of the Bene Gesserit. He remembered nothing of his face dancer origins. End quote.
Wild.
Kind of fun. Kind of Faradin vibes in some ways. Like they're seeing this non-BG fall into the BG camp. And they go, well, shit. Oops.
Yeah.
Too late.
It's amazing. You know, like honestly, on a first read of this chapter, I was like kind of confused what was happening. But reading it and then rereading it and then listening to the audiobook, I was like, oh my God, the Bene Gesserit are like doing a bit. They're like putting on this whole play in order to achieve two goals. One, to pacify the priests, right? Because the whole reason we're in this like argument in this meeting right now is because the priests are like, we don't want to be ruled by a face dancer. Let's oust this guy. Vote one of us as the next high priest.
Right.
And Tuik is like, what are you talking about? John, the belly. So there's all this confusion. And then the Bene Gesserit here are like, okay, let's use that to our advantage. Let's not only secure this alliance with the priests and pacify them and prove to them that Tuik is actually Tuik. Whoops. Waff gave us bad info. Kind of blame it on Waff. But also to then turn Tuik into turn his loyalty to them.
Yeah, it's wild.
Like the 1-2 punch of this show that they just put on for everyone. Just masterful stuff, you know?
It's so cool. I love it. It's great. Now, speaking of, they do have to deal with Waff. So Taraza cuts through the bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
Calls him out. She's like, bro, you've been holding out on us. You got a lot of info you weren't sharing with us. Gonna hit you with that Catholic guilt. Give me 20 Hail Marys or whatever. And basically she says, quote, would you dishonor yourself in the land of the prophet? You have not shared openly as you said you would. End quote. Calling him out for his lies. And it's true. Waff is playing a double game. He's trying to manipulate the Bene Gesserit. He's trying to manipulate the honored Matre. He's looking for that great belief, that final goal of the Bene Tleilax. And it's clear that for sure, as you said, he's bitten off way more than he can chew. And Taraza takes a risky shot. She actually almost gets herself killed.
Yeah. Oh my God.
She reveals Odrade's theory about the axolotl tanks. She goes, listen, you will never make one of us into an axolotl tank. And Waff is like, okay, kill them on when I do the hand gesture. I'm about to do the hand gesture. And then she has to stop him and go, by the way, if you do that, if you finish telling them to kill us, you're going to lose everything forever and you're never going to be accepted by the god. And luckily it works, but my God, it was like a sliver of a second from being bloodshed everywhere. And not that they couldn't handle themselves, but like not the outcome that anybody wants, right?
Exactly.
Now with that sort of ace played, Waff realizes, oh shit, they do know that I've been withholding. Okay, I will tell you more, but you can never use these abilities on any of us. And we've already pre-programmed every Bene Tleilax agent to automatically go into kill mode if it's ever attempted on any of us. It's like, oh, okay. Very, very cautious, but altogether a fair play.
Yeah.
He tells her about the sexual abilities of the honored Matre. Quote, they can magnify the sensations of the orgasmic platform, transmitting this throughout a male body. They elicit the total sensual involvement of the male.
Not total.
Total sensual involvement of the male. Multiple orgasmic waves are created and may be continued by the female for an extended period. End quote. And everyone's like, all right, sure. And he goes, you know what? This is better. Hey, face dancers, come do it. Come demonstrate for everyone. He pulls up the Pornhub tab. He's like, okay, so here's the URL. This will show you everything. And of course, the gathered sisters are committing everything they're seeing to memory. Everyone in the room's learning, including Shiana, who's like, this is a lot. This is a lot going on.
Me too. I'm also taking notes.
I'm taking notes as well.
For the test. next week and only for the test next week.
Total sensual involvement, you say? I am curious. Let's show me. Yeah. I'm curious too. Yeah. They're like, just the priests are taking notes on their little notepads. They're like, oh, this is fascinating. Intellectually, it's fascinating. It's not
right.
Yeah,
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm my brain is so stimulated.
My brain is hard right now. Well, the chapter ends as Odrade ponders what they learned later that day alone in her room. And she's considering, she is playing the Sherlock Holmes type right now. She's connecting the dots. She's comparing connections between Cyanoke, the sort of like ceremony of the wives that Leto II had back in the day, to the dancers in the square that she witnessed, this sort of like building without rhythm, the 200 steps of repetition, and kind of how it all ties into itself. And also these sexual abilities and the sort of like the bass dancers who were doing this demonstration had similar like avoiding these regular rhythms and kind of disrupting flows, and it is very, very interesting, it sounds. And she's kind of contemplating how it's all interconnected.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about this in the future more in depth at some point, but it's clear that like Frank very much believed or was interested in this idea that like warfare and human nature and violence are interconnected with sex and sexual energy and the release of sexual tension. Those are the connections that Odrade is drawing here, right? The evolution of Cyanoke as like this religious pent-up fervor being released as now this dance of like death in the square, to the patterns of like maintaining a rhythm and infinite orgasms for extended periods of time, like the sexual release, and that being used as a weapon of war from the honored matres. So she's kind of connecting these philosophical threads that I think Frank was also quite interested in exploring in this book and in Chapter House as well.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I have a very hot take that I'm going to share after the third chapter. So just teasing you all now, but it's a little bit about that. I think
titillating
about Frank. I know
my brain is so.
Is your brain totally sensually involved?
Yeah, I can't wait. Okay, moving on to chapter 41. This is a fairly quick one. In this chapter, Lucilla and Brismali leave that safe house they were in the city of Yasai, and they make their way out to an abandoned Harkonnen factory where allegedly allies will be there to help them get off planet and get to Arrakis, the ultimate goal.
What a simple plan.
It's also where they're presumably going to be linking up with Duncan, who's coming from a different path with Tormsa.
Yeah, easy, simple, nice, cool.
Great plan. I love it. I love when a plan comes together. Oh no, the safe house is compromised.
No. Oh no, who could have known?
I feel like this keeps happening.
Every single time. Yeah.
The safe house is compromised. There's already an honored matre here, the young hot babe known as Marbella. And luckily, Lucilla's disguise and the disguise that she and Brismali are in is enough to like trick Marbella. Marbella's not immediately suspicious, and she immediately doesn't attack them or arrest them or anything like that. In fact, Marbella thinks that Lucilla is one of her elders, a fellow superior honored matre. She shows respect to Lucilla. We also see in this interaction, as they kind of suss each other out, how perhaps the honored matres treat the locals of Gamu, because Marbella continues to dismiss Brismali and continues to call Brismali it, and is like disgusted by his presence, is wondering why he's still alive at this point. Like, he was your guide, he got you here, why does he need to be here any longer? Can we just kill him? She fucking knocks his ass on the floor at one point, showing us her prowess. Being able to take down Brismali is no easy feat.
Right, yeah.
She also, perhaps more importantly, reveals in this back and forth that the Gola has been captured, and she's prepped him for the bedding ceremony.
Right.
Things are ready to go, and you just arrived at the perfect moment.
Yeah.
Come watch.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is not the plan, and Lucilla kind of panics, and she commands Marbella to not bed the Gola. Don't do that. Don't do the thing you prepped him for. But it's already too late. I found this interesting because it's some insight into Honored Matre culture. Quote, "Fair game, great Honored Matre, and I marked him first. He is already partly subdued." End quote. Interesting there.
Yeah.
Because I think that shows us that there's almost this like hunter's honor among the Honored Matres. Like, look, I caught the deer first. I get to skin it. That's my meat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the fact that Marbella clearly thinks of Lucilla as a superior means that even it's not insubordination to do that, right? Like you can even say no to a superior and say, no, this is my kill. This is my hunt. I found this person first and I get to bed them first. I found that quite interesting.
Yeah. It's also possible that like there's something to the bedding like subjugation process that requires like you do the first step. And then once that first step is done with that person, it's very hard for someone else to do it. So it's also possible that it's like similar to if Lucilla or if Odrade has effectively disregarded Taraz's commands a couple of times because in the moment there was something that needed to be done. And it seems like whatever Rube Goldberg machine has been set off in Duncan's sexuality, Marbella's already started that process. And so
true.
Sure, there's that.
Absolutely.
They do have kind of a hunter's, like they feel very primal in that way for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Marbella says, too bad, I'm going to go sleep with this Gola, but there's a window. Feel free to watch and enjoy the show. And I think we're about to get a sex scene.
Indeed. We are. In fact, it is that time in the HBO episode where we're going to get some gratuitous sexual activity.
That's right.
And buckle up, folks. This is one of those chapters that will stick with you, whether or not you want it to. And this chapter is a doozy. We're joining Duncan, disoriented after he and Tormsa were caught by the forces of the Honored Matre. Really sad look. I liked Tormsa. We didn't really get to know him, but the blood shooting out of his eyes and ears and mouth. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. Oh,
R.I.P.
Tormsa. R.I.P. He's a real one.
Yeah, he was weirdly
Tormsa.
Into teeth, but outside
Super
of that,
into
Tormsa
teeth.
was a cool guy.
I mean, I'd nibble a branch for Tormsa just to help him out, you know? Now, Duncan's mind is all over the place. He's disoriented. And he's flickering through some like pre-Gola memories, some memories of the No Globe, as well as some other like just flickers here and there as he's struggling to remember what led up to that capture. He's kind of sorting his memories.
Yeah.
Now, ultimately, we learned that, yes, Tormsa was likely working on the same outdated information that Burzmali was working on, and they literally entered the room and were immediately stunned and captured. Tormsa was killed. And this safe house is not so safe, as it turns out. Waking to the present, Duncan realizes he's naked, and Marbella's there, just working him over, just humming and kissing and doing all sorts of stuff. And he glimpses through the window. He sees Lucilla and Burzmali, both feverishly taking notes, or whatever. No, probably not. But we're seeing the sexual prowess that Waff has talked about throughout this book. And his consciousness, as this stuff is happening, tumbles away down a branch of awakening memories. Fucking guy is awakening again. This is the second time in this book. And this time, he is obtaining the memories of the death moments of every Duncan, Idaho Gola, which is notable because he is taken from the body of the first Duncan. This is not one of these serial like Golas who's been, they harvest the body every time he dies and they make a new one. This is a Gola from the first Duncan, presumably no reasonable access to the many Duncan Idahos that Leto II had in his service. And yet here he has these memories of being crushed by the worm. It's wild. It's really, really crazy. Now, at the same time, the Tleilaxu's hidden programming basically boots up and he begins to flip the script on Marbella. He basically begins to do what she's doing to her, and he very quickly overwhelms this young Honored Matre. And truly, I mean, listen, folks, if you're going to come to Heretics of Dune to like set your own expectations for yourself in the bedroom, this is not the chapter.
Don't.
This is don't do
Just
it.
watch porn instead.
Just watch porn instead. It's so much more realistic than this. Because here's the quote, the ecstasy engulfed her entire sensorium.
Mm-hmm.
She saw a spreading blaze of whiteness against her eyelids. Every muscle quivered with an ecstasy she had not imagined possible for herself.
Oh my God.
Again, the waves spread outward. Again and again, she lost count of the repetitions. End quote.
Folks, do not let your partner read this book.
No, they're going to be like, I'm going to leave you for this fictional character who's actually kind of shitty in a couple books. truly insane.
Yeah.
But
Setting the bar high, Duncan.
Listen, that's Duncan. Have you seen this guy fucking climb a rock wall? It's incredible. So that happens, and Murbella is fully exhausted. She like can barely stand. Girl, same, you know.
For real. Sounds like it.
And Duncan realizes in this pre-programmed set of actions that the Tleilaxu built into him, he's like, oh, this should be Lucilla, and now it's time for me to kill her. Wait, this is not Lucilla, this is Murbella. Oh, interesting. And he's sort of realizing the programming as well in the moment. And he goes, never mind, I'm not going to kill her. Murbella attempts to kill him and fails, like ludicrously. She's slow and sleepy. The pillow talk has really disarmed her. I think she's not really in the headspace. But she does unlock the door for presumably this honored matre, this senior honored matre, to come in and kill the Gola they were worried about. Quote, all of the honored matre had been warned. There was a Gola armed with forbidden knowledge by the Tleilaxu. That Gola must be killed. End quote. She tries, she fails, and much to her chagrin, Lucilla's not an honored matre. She's just a really good actor. Yeah, Lucilla knocks out Murbella, knocks her unconscious, and is like, cool, glad there's a no ship on its way. We're fucking going to Arrakis. Finally, we're getting the plan back on its rails.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of interesting things here.
Please.
First, I want to shout out Madison in the chat. Madison writes, my usual complaint about sex scenes is that they are generally uninteresting and typically don't move the story in a significant way. But this time, it is grossly interesting and you can't skip it because it reveals so much. I agree.
So my hot take is people criticize this book for being horny. And for like, I've even heard such literally disgusting takes as like Frank Herbert after Beverly Passed was horny. And like that is why he wrote these books these ways. I would argue, especially on a reread, this chapter has sex in it. Is this chapter sexy? Not even fucking a little bit. Are you kidding me?
I would disagree. I think this is written really well. Like this holds up against like some of the better smut out there.
No, absolutely not.
I disagree.
Negative 100 on that take, my guy.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to hear what people think. But what I would say is, there is so much clinical language. It's like the muscles of her vagina, and it's not about the gaze. It's not about how things look. It's not the swell of her breasts bouncing. None of it is falling into that like cheap kind of porn. I'm literally reading fucking Fourth Wing right now. And
oh my God.
And it's like this, but there's a lot of like, he's claiming, and it's very like, it's hyperbole, but it's written to be arousing.
Yeah.
I think it's clinical. I mean, I think that's how I would describe this sex scene, because again, and I think that's also why people mislabel it, because it is uncomfortable to read. Like, his erection was so hard it hurt. It's like, is that good? Is that like, I think you just stop at, he was really hard and like, oh yeah. And then you say, no, it's like, this is, it feels very objective. I don't know. It's the way he wrote it.
Yeah.
I was realizing on this read through, the sex scenes in this book are they're almost gross and uncomfortable. I mean, for sure they're gross and uncomfortable also because Duncan's a minor in this scene, and that's definitely been broadly criticized. Like, we totally forget,
for sure,
even though he has old memories, this is still the body of effectively a child. The other side of it is like the tone is not what it would be, I think, if Frank's goal, like when Frank writes about Lucilla's sensual curves underneath her robes, and when he writes about like the women and talking about them and how they embody that desire, right? When he wrote about Jessica, I got a lot more of like, oh, okay, wow, this is a little spicy. Like we're seeing the desire that Jessica elicits in people by being this kind of sensuous person. These chapters feel very clinical to me. So that's my hot take. I think people have mislabeled it. I think some people are uncomfortable because it's talking about sex, and then it is not sexy and fun enough as like pornography or smut to be like excused for that reason. So then people just say, this is too horny, I don't like it. But I don't think it's too horny. I think it's too clinical for people who are not used to reading about sex in a clinical way. We mostly read about sex either in textbooks or in like smut, and that's a whole different tone. That's my that's my take.
Yep. And that totally makes sense. I mean, again, for Frank, as Eli is saying in the chat, a lot of this is about not the sex, not the act itself or even anything romantic. It's about power. It's about control. It's about warfare. It's about manipulation. It's about all of the other things that sex is a tool for. It is a means to an end, and a very direct and aggressive means to an end for the honored matre. And we're seeing that in action here, and we're seeing Duncan flip that on its head for the honored matre and completely disorient Marbella. It throws a monkey wrench into this war.
Yeah.
Duncan has come up with the shield that blocks the sword of the honored matre. And suddenly everyone's like, fuck, what do we do now? I don't think this is a horny book. I agree with you that is a mislabeling of Heretics and Chapter House. I do think this book is preoccupied, and in my opinion, a little too preoccupied with sex as a means of manipulation and control and taking it to the nth degree of a superpower that completely addles the male mind and subjugates them.
Sure.
That to me starts pushing the line of believability. But again, it's a sci-fi story. Frank's allowed to take it and push it as far as he wants to try and get a point across. But I don't think the point he's trying to get across is, I want to turn you on to your reader.
Yeah.
I think he's still exploring the ideas, not the act of eroticism itself.
Right. And what I would ask is like, why is it taking it too far? Like if he's going to treat anything like Mentata powers or the Bene Gesserit's, Prana Bendu abilities or anything, like why is it too far to use sex in this way, do you think?
I think it's part of it is definitely my own discomfort with chapters like these, for sure. It is weird to remember that Duncan is 15 years old in this. We don't know Marbella's exact age, but 15 is too young.
Yeah, totally.
Part of it definitely gives essay vibes. Like it gives much of this is not consensual. Right. Duncan did not consent to any of this happening in this chapter, and only his special abilities and him going Super Saiyan meant that he survived. Everyone else the honored matre subjugated didn't. And I think I just think it's an indelicate handling of that. It's an indelicate handling of sex as a weapon, and it fails to explore the victim's point of view. And it's only, it's almost too detached and clinical from the act itself. And Frank, sort of in classic Frank fashion, focuses on the philosophy, the history, the politics of sex, and fails to address or even remotely touch upon the actual act itself and what that might be like for someone who isn't Duncan, for someone who's just a Gamu native who becomes an honored matre slave. So that's one of my main criticisms of Heretics and Chapter House is that it's not that sex is a bad thing to explore as a weapon. I just don't think it is explored as delicately and as thoroughly as it should have been. Frank had one or two things to say with it and kind of just said those things. So that's sort of the thrust of my critique. But again, as we're reading, my appreciation for these books is certainly growing because we are having these conversations and this back and forth and, questioning our own initial reactions to
Yeah.
things and asking, why did I feel this way? I think this type of book absolutely requires you to examine your own feelings as you read as well. You got to journal about reading Heretics of Dune.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with some of what Frank attempted with the first few books, where if people come away from the book and they go, I feel really gross about that chapter because it was a minor and it was forced and it was all these things are terrible. And also just even that his awakening was supposed to be this seduction in the first place. And, the Bene Gesserit go, it's too early. I know it's too early, but we're going to do it anyway. And it's that doesn't excuse this. I think if people come away from this book and that is the thing that they're focused on and really affected by, I think Frank would also acknowledge that he failed. Because that was not, I don't think that's his intention. It's not some blaring commentary on consent and whatever. That's not even part of the equation when you're reading this chapter.
Right.
No part of it talks about that. And people very rightly understand this chapter with that lens. But it's true that what you're saying, that this chapter focuses on control and power. And it's a chess game where the pieces are sexual maneuvers. And again, it could be written in a way that is very male gazy, considering Frank is an older guy. It could have been written in a way that's very voyeuristic and very celebratory of the female body and what is Mirbella's body doing in these sexy ways. Instead, he talks about her areolas darkening, and it's again, this feels like a textbook. It's very strange.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, yes. Again, for me, that stretches believability. I'm just okay. Mentats, I can believe. Even face dancers, I can believe. But I do agree with folks that are okay, these hot babes in leotards from outer space come and sex mind control people. Begins to stretch my own level of believability in this universe as well. So that's certainly a critique I agree with too.
Yeah.
But I think distilling it down to just that, to your point, is a mistake, right? That is not what this book is about. To distill it down to that and hand wave away a whole book and all the ideas in this book just because of that I think is not the right way to approach Heretics.
Yeah, I have less of the believability issue personally, because again, we're in a universe where a Reverend Mother can drink a deadly poison and then be totally fine afterwards with no antidote. That is, by our modern understanding of how the human body works, just impossible. And we have to acknowledge that Prana Bendu and all these different things have enabled things that we can't even fucking fathom right now. Yeah. And then you say, could that extend into sexuality? And I'm I can think of a few ways Prana Bendu would help out in the bedroom. So even just that as the tee up for the grand slam that is, hey, this is possible in this universe. I'm yeah, I get it. But you're 1,000% you're right. Part of the issue in all of this is when you start talking about it and you go, Duncan fucking made a woman come from climbing a rock wall, and now he's giving her uncountable full body sensory. It's when you talk about it, it loses the very intentional word choice that Frank used, which I think makes it what it is. And anyway, fascinating conversation. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about it, because I do think that if you look up what are people's problems with Heretics, one of the biggest complaints is that book's so horny, LOL, so focused on sex, obsessed with sex, blah, blah, blah. But I do think it's an important conversation to have, because we are also talking about this within the context of American culture, where talking about sex is totally forbidden unless it's hardcore pornography, at which point it's okay, you can have it as a treat. So anyway, glad we had a chance to talk about it. Yeah, we do have a takeaway, which is not that.
That wasn't the takeaway.
Was not the takeaway.
Into a takeaway by
as
accident.
It turns out. Oops, all takeaways. We are going to get to our takeaway in just a minute. Before we get there, we're going to take a quick break. So don't go anywhere, dear listener. When we're back, we're going to talk about Duncan's memories.
All right, welcome back, folks. Let's dive into today's takeaway. For today's takeaway, we want to take a beat to really sit with Duncan's memories, because that happens really, really fast. And of course, it's all sort of interwoven with the actual sex taking place with Mirbella, right? So we want to examine these memories sort of line by line, because there's a lot of juicy tidbits in here that are worth visiting and revisiting. Some of this is new stuff that we're learning about Duncan, Idaho. Some of it is old things that we're revisiting, again, through Duncan's memories as he's unlocking them too. So for the takeaway today, we want to dive a bit deeper here.
Yeah.
And let's just go through the chapter sort of chronologically. As the memories come to Duncan, let's talk about them.
Yeah, totally.
The first one that hits him is about a sporting event.
Yeah.
Quote, he remembered sitting at the edge of a wide lawn. There was some kind of bowling game in progress. Eccentric balls that bounced and darted with no apparent design. The players were young men in a common costume of Giddy Prime. End quote.
Oh my God. Did they kick the ball with their feet? Did they carry it over lines in the lawn? It was a really, really wide lawn, and there were tees and dolphins on the field, I think. There were dolphins flopping on the field, and very strange memory, Duncan.
Yeah.
So strange.
Yeah. They wore all this padding.
They had like kind of battle helmets, but they were not quite.
Kendrick played the halftime show. It was crazy.
It's wild that Frank wrote that in the 80s.
This is not going to make sense to people listening to this 3 months from now, but we are recording this on Super Bowl Sunday.
There we go. Yeah, that's the joke.
Okay, so this memory is interesting because as Duncan is like remembering this sporting event, he's also recalling that he was there with a young female companion of his.
Naturally.
Classic, on brand.
Of course, yeah.
And it seems like he's quite young at this because he's cracking jokes to this female companion, right? He's kind of like, look at those old guys playing this old man game, huh?
Yeah.
You wouldn't catch me playing this old man game. And it's cute. You know, it feels like young Duncan on a date. That's kind of my read on it.
Yeah,
on a date with a young girl. Here's the kicker, folks, though. Careful who you go to dates with, I guess. Turns out this female companion is the one who betrays him to the Harkonnens.
Damn it.
Because we know Duncan was saved by Duke Leto from Harkonnen slavery. That's why he's so loyal to House Atreides. And it appears this is the first 5 books in. This is the first time ever we're given into a clue as to what might have happened or who was responsible for his captivity, how he might have ended up there. Betrayed by a potential lover.
You can't trust anyone, man. You go on one date, you go to watch some old men playing a game. Very sad times. I just love any glimpse into normalcy in the Dune universe. The idea of Giddy Prime, people like gathering for like a Sunday sports league, this is the rec league in Giddy Prime. Like, that's kind of fun. Now, Duncan next has a more recent memory of being in the No Globes library. This is with Teg and Lucilla, studying the layout of Yasai as he explains how the barony used to be. So Yasai, the capital city of Giddy Prime and Gamu, used to be the barony where Baron Harkonnen lived, and this giant cube, this giant brutalist cube, is where Baron called home. Quote, barony was built to a particular population design criterion. Maximum stuffing with minimum expenditure of materials. The flat top was the only human-oriented space in the damned thing. He remembered telling that to Teg and Lucilla both. End quote. So naturally, the design of the city with this like low building slums with this giant cube in the middle is blatantly exposing the hierarchy, the social hierarchy that the Baron was enforcing on Giddy Prime. And this is the oppression, really, that they were using to keep the populace under control. And again, this is just so juxtaposed against Duke Leto and the way that he leads his people and he constructs his planetary governance. This is rough. And on the top of the cube, there are parks, there are penthouses, thopter pads. You sipping Mai Tais on the top of the cube.
Party's up top and you're not invited.
Yo, you are not invited. You are a dirty sewer person with big arms and no nose. So yeah, it's very heavy-handed, but it's fascinating. And it definitely seems like something that the Harkonnen house would have done. And especially tough luck for the suckers living down under, right? Who are trapped in their lives of just, maybe they are sewer workers, like I was joking about, or maybe they just have these like shit jobs. And the only way to get up in life it's like base servitude. There's a line there about base servitude. You have to just completely debase yourself and be totally, and even then you're like, now you're carrying the cocktails to the rich elites, but you're not one of them, right? So it's like everything is so locked in place. And here's a bit of the propaganda, the sort of like brainwashing that kept people in their places. Quote, the outside the city, was a dangerous place. The city's managers made it appear even more dangerous than it actually was. Besides, few in there knew anything about a better life outside, capital O. The only better life they knew about was on top. And the only way up there was through an absolutely abasing servility. End quote. Now, I personally can't help, like, you say you can't really find happiness anywhere else. The only way you can find happiness is top of the cube. Now people are focused on that rat race. They're focused on that like corporate ladder, even if everything is rigged against them. And I can't help but think about societies like, I mean, lest I get too political in this podcast about a political book.
How dare you?
I know.
Stop.
I'm sorry.
Political police. The political police is here. Hands up.
Yeah, we're going to get our comments again. People, they're talking about politics again. The point is, here in the US, we are definitely sold this like very particular, very capitalistic centric method for success. And if you fail, if you're homeless, if you're poor, it is because you didn't work hard enough. And that's this sort of like bootstrap myth that I think a lot of that exists in like heavily capitalistic societies versus other places in the world are like, no, if you are so failed by the institutions that you end up homeless, society has failed you. And that is like a different way that some societies live, and it works fine. And yet we've kind of been told that that's just not the way things work. So I thought that this was, again, tremendously relevant to today's conversations about today's societies, and really poignant, really worth thinking about, worth talking about for sure.
And also the sort of like 1984 Brave New World, like doublethink that takes place clearly on Giddy Prime, right? It's more dangerous out there than it is in here.
Yeah.
War, famine, immigrants.
Oh, no,
they're
not
all
them.
out there.
Oh, no.
Okay. So you keep working the coal mines in here and don't complain about it. I really liked that as well. Like, yes, the physical features are clearly of the way the city is built, the architecture clearly built to keep the subjugated.
Yeah.
But also, and to create like a clear delineation between them, right? It is difficult to get up top in a physical sense, but also in a socioeconomic sense. The folks down under are oppressed, even within the context of their lives and what they're told. It's very like North Korea, right? Like this is the best place for you to live, right here underneath the heel of my boot.
Yeah.
Because if you leave that, there's immigrants.
Oh, no. With free healthcare.
I liked that. And I really like that you brought up this point. There's like many layers of oppression here in Barony and on Giddy Prime. The physical, the economic, the social, the mental and emotional. All those layers are meant to keep the people down below exactly where they are their whole lives.
Anecdotally, there's a whole thing about like you teach elephants they can't pull their ropes, like you teach them that, like you tie them to a stake.
Yes.
And they
it's really sad.
You teach them as babies that they aren't strong enough, so that they just remember, I'm not strong enough to do it, even when they are big and strong enough. It's like you take from them the ability to learn a better way, and then that's how you have them in servility their whole lives.
Yeah, one of the best ways to keep a population oppressed is to not let them dream of a better life.
Yeah.
Not let them believe a better life is possible, that this is the best, what they have right now.
Yeah.
Well, moving on from the architecture of Giddy Prime, as interesting as it is, there are more memories to get through. Following this, Duncan has sort of a quick series of memories. They come back to back to back to back. He has flashes, for example, of hearing Paul's voice, Paul speaking to him. And then he sees himself standing in a mirror, but it's different versions of himself. He's young, he's old, he's different, he's gruff, he's whatever. All he recognizes is his eyes, Those are the things that stay constant, but his face continues to change through all these memory flashes. He then also recalls this brief interaction with Duke Leto I, the old Duke himself. So let's break these down because I think there's an interesting bit about arrogance here that maybe is quite revealing. Starting with Paul's memory, all we hear is one quick line from Paul, essentially saying the future is inevitable, something that I'm sure Duncan had heard the real Paul say to him. And this leads to a shockingly uncharacteristic thought from our current Duncan going through this memory in this book. Quote, how odd it was, Duncan thought. There was an arrogance in the prescient, like the arrogance of the mentat seated in his most brittle logic. I never before thought of Paul as arrogant. End quote.
Interesting. Yeah.
That made me sit back in my seat a little. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Duncan, Idaho. Shit-talking Paul Atreides?
Yeah.
Fascinating. That to me is really interesting because this shows us that over the course of many thousands of years, through the many like unhinged multiple lifetimes Duncan has experienced and that this Gola is awakening to in this moment, they have changed him quite dramatically. This is not Duncan, Idaho that we met in Dune by Frank Herbert, right? This is not even the Duncan, Idaho / hate we knew in Messiah. This is someone who has evolved and changed quite a bit, and someone who went from being deathly loyal to the Atreides to now thinking, well, that's kind of arrogant of him to say that.
Yeah.
Or like that kind of reeks of arrogance, you know? How is he so sure about that? Questioning the Atreides. Imagine Duncan, Idaho questioning an Atreides. We saw the first inklings of that in God Emperor of Dune as the repeated Duncans continued to push back against the God Emperor. But, you know, he's like a fucking worm creature. And none of those Duncans, at least from what we're told, ever necessarily push back on Paul. And Leto, too, even would use the voice of Paul to pacify his Duncan Golas. And yet here we have Duncan kind of pushing back against a memory of Paul. I found that interesting.
I also do like that he's kind of bundling it all together. I mean, I think throughout these books, I'm realizing that like mentat training and prescience abilities do seem to kind of go hand in hand. And where we have now like Teg, mentat Bashar, who's exhibiting some things that sound very much like prescience. We had Paul, who was trained as a mentat. The idea that we're kind of getting this again in the same comparison, you're saying, oh, like mentats, the prescient were so arrogant. But it also does speak a little to Duncan's shortcomings, where he sees mentats as being arrogant in their brittle logic. But mentats were like undeniably very good at what they were doing. And similarly, why does Paul think the future is inevitable, and why is he so sure of what's going to happen? Dude's fucking literally prescient, Duncan. It's like, don't call that arrogance. It's like, I can just see over the hill, man. I'm not tooting my own horn here. I can just look at what's coming next. And I think it's interesting. It's like you're right. He's breaking a little bit from Paul, but he's doing so in a very Duncan way.
Yeah.
He's not going, Paul was ultimately not as powerful as I thought he was. He was more of a tragic figure who was, victim to his he's not saying what we know as readers. He is coming to his own conclusions within the limited data set that he has. It's very interesting.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great observation. Now, I do want to contrast this with the memory that happens shortly after, because then Duncan remembers the words of Duke Leto uttered in the dining room on Caladan. So we're talking like pre-Dune Book 1. Quote, "We will eat now," the Duke said. "It was a royal command, saved from arrogance by a faint grin that said," somebody had to say it.
God.
End quote.
God, even that memory's hot. He's so sexy.
Go, Duke Leto!
Damn it.
Can you imagine Oscar Isaac doing that?
Oh.
Faint
grin. Just Oscar Isaac faintly grinning at me. Oh, save me.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, that one line says so much about Duke Leto as well, right? His sort of like casualness with power, his almost like discomfort with his own role, right? Like, I guess I'm the Duke. Nobody eats until I say so. So okay, everybody eat now.
Yeah, everyone eat.
It's really fascinating. It shows us, and again, remember, this is Duncan's memories. So we are looking at these memories through Duncan's lens. And it's very revealing to us that he thought of the old Duke in this way. How much respect and awe he had for the old Duke, who, if you'll recall, looks exactly like Miles Tegg,
By the way, yeah.
I also found it interesting that these two memories happened right next to each other practically, and that both of them used the word arrogance. That stuck out to me because I think, as I stated earlier, this is a new Duncan, an evolved Duncan, and perhaps we're seeing Duncan begin to question and change his own core belief system rather than, say, be loyal to the people and institutions, right? To anyone named Atreides, to House Atreides. Perhaps we're seeing that this evolved Duncan is someone who gives his loyalty to ideals or to actions, the way, not exactly what the old Duke said at that dinner table, but the way he said it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That the actions he took, not necessarily what he said, which clearly show the ideals that the old Duke held, this sort of like, it is, this casual approach to power rather than this like power hungry approach he would have been used to from being enslaved by the Harkonnens. I don't know if that's exactly the intention with these lines. That's sort of my half tinfoil hat theory read on it.
Sure.
But it just stuck out to me as I was going through these line by line for today's script that the word arrogance would come up so close to each other about two different but related characters in Duncan's life in this way. And I think it just shows us that this is a new Duncan who's breaking free from his old beliefs.
Yeah. And there's a lot of those little hints throughout this first book, right? Like this first chunk of the book is like, this is not the Duncan we're used to. This is not the Gola we're used to. He's capable of more than anybody in universe is expecting all the time. I am curious, which half of the tinfoil hat are you wearing? The left side, the right side?
The top half.
Shit.
But not
Cool.
the bottom half.
No. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, sit with that for a little bit.
Nice. Well, let's talk about this intense sexual encounter with Myrbella. Because, so this is where Duncan is flooded with memories of his other Gola lives. And this is truly the most
bombshell.
Again, hugest. Like, I think there are only a handful of things that Frank puts in this universe that is truly unexplainable by any stretch of the, and this is like fully, how does he come to have these? Who's to say? But in between, and also most of them are death by worm tackle, as it turns out. There was kind of a pattern there.
Mm-hmm.
But in between those deaths, there are these beautiful memories of life and love, which was really touching. Quote, the sweetness of a newborn daughter held in his arms, the musky odors of a passionate mate, the cascade of flavors from a fine Dannian wine, the panting exertions of the practice floor. End quote. So he's remembering so many lives led, so many times he, as Duncan Idaho, trained himself to excellence, so many partners he's had, so many. Again, we think about the Duncan from God Emperor of Dune, who goes to the village and sees his children and the wife of the last Duncan.
Oh my God.
Or one of the last Duncans.
Yeah.
And this Duncan now has both memories, both like sides of that memory of the whole long life that he led with that woman, with that fish speaker, retiring to that little town, having the kids, raising the kids, passing away. Like, it is crazy, but that's where he's at, and that's what he's getting in this moment. Yeah. We also get confirmation in a true, I highlighted this entire page.
Yeah.
Also, I do this thing where I'll like highlight a paragraph if I think it's worth talking about. And on this page, I ended up highlighting like 9 back-to-back paragraphs. And I was like, I think I'm just highlighting the chapter at this point. Because here's a quote. This is of the axolotl tanks, confirming O'Drade's theory via Duncan's memories. Quote, he remembered emerging time after time, bright lights in padded medical hands. The hands rotated him, and in the unfocused blurs of the newborn, he saw a great mound of female flesh, monstrous in her almost immobile grossness, a maze of dark tubes linked her body to giant metal containers. End quote.
What an image.
Fucking awful. And very visceral writing there. Very effective writing from Frank. Definitely, we get the horror that Odrade and Terraza were kind of sharing in that moment of like, what would that even look like?
Yeah.
And we also see, for all of the shit that the Tleilaxu do, we see maybe why Waff might be a little bit like, oh, I really don't want to talk about those. The tanks. I was thinking of throwing some balls around if you want to like play a game or something. I don't dodging the question. No. Kill them with the darts.
Right.
Like, yeah, for sure. I would also dodge that topic all the time.
Yeah. The implications of this are crazy too, because the fact that Odrade said no one has ever seen a Tleilaxu female before.
Yeah.
I just have so many questions. It can't be every female. Right? A society can't run if every female is just like an axolotl birthing machine, but no one's ever seen a Tleilaxu female before.
Yeah.
And maybe it is such a male or genderless dominated society. Like they only just kind of breed enough females to replace tanks, just to like maintain the population and no more. Like maybe they'd have no other use for females in their society. These are all hypothetical questions. But it's certainly all disgusting. Yeah, that's sort of the through line.
No kidding.
It's brutal.
It is. And it's definitely one of those things that like, man, you meet hate in the second book and you're like, Gola, what cool, You met B-Jazz and he's like, tank brother, fist bump. And you're like, okay, cool, tanks, I guess. And then here we are in book 5, learning that this whole fucking time, probably, we don't know for sure. Maybe the technology's evolved over the years and everything. But this whole time, it seems like this has been happening. And it's just disgusting. Thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah. The depravity is kind of mind-boggling. And it makes me think of Odrade's comment from earlier where she was like, if you pretend to be stupid long enough, you just are.
Long pretense.
I'm obviously like paraphrasing badly. But I think that also goes for like, if you pretend to be depraved enough and disgusting long enough, you become depraved and disgusting,
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Okay, let's wrap up today's takeaway. A lot of ideas there, a lot of interesting memories, some peeks into Duncan's past, a wild awakening, right? Like I think it's worth acknowledging once again that these memories are not entirely this Duncan's. They are every Duncan's memories of the last 3,000 plus years.
Those Golas who were killed and never retrieved, those memories are there.
Boom.
Within him.
Click, click, click. All of that's somehow unlocking within him. And Duncan has now achieved something akin to the quote-unquote immortality that the Tleilaxu masters have, right? They kill their old body, reharvest it, be born again, and continue living, and just kind of carry that onwards. But that's linear, right? Like that's them doing that so that their memories like continue linearly. I loved the example you gave earlier of Duncan remembers marrying that woman in the village and having children, and also not marrying that woman and seeing that woman at the village. He remembers both sides of that memory in relation to that family he may or may not have had.
Right.
That's not a linear thing. Waff doesn't have two opposite memories like that.
Yeah.
It's Duncan who has not even just two. He probably has like dozens of like opposing memories.
Yeah.
That's wild like the implications of that are crazy and raises so many questions. I'm also left wondering, like, what triggered this, right? Because we know Golas awakened their own personal memories, the one memory that their lifetime has, through, what Miles Tegg did to this Duncan earlier, or the sort of traumatic stress imposed upon them that, like, happened with hate back in Dune Messiah.
Yeah.
So, like, is this an unintended side effect of his Tleilaxu programming? When that program kicked in, did it kick up something else in him? Or is this another sort of like psychological trauma stress response in response to the honored matre's like sexual abilities. Like, are their abilities so intense, so much more intense than anything any Gola has ever experienced before, that it's unlocking a whole new type of Gola power that no one has ever been able to unlock before.
Yeah.
And we can really only theorize, but
Yeah.
it makes me wonder why in this moment in particular this is happening to Duncan, and why it didn't happen to any previous Duncan over 3,000 years.
We do know that Waff, one of the Tleilaxu servants, one of the face dancers, demonstrated the abilities on Waff, and Waff had them kill themselves because Waff like almost succumbed to the seduction, right? But we also know then that Waff went through basically this experience and didn't awaken other memories. Like, he didn't have anything else. So I do think there's something specific about Duncan, and we don't know quite what that is. We just have, all we can do is speculate. But this is also the first time, to be clear, the first time that a Duncan is fully aware of how long Duncan's been in the universe. Because even every Gola that was brought to Leto was still like, oh, I'm the first. And then he finds out that he's a chain of Duncans. And he goes, how many? And no one answers the question because no one really knows and no one keeps track. Like, this is the first time that someone other than Leto knows everything Duncan's been through as an identity. And like, what does that do to the human perspective?
Right.
When you have that much humanity? And is it like other memories? Is this opening him up to the possibility of some sort of abomination? But I think the difference here is that he is still just him in this moment. And he has all of this stuff, but none of it's like, other memories, personas that exist and they come forward and they talk to you and they attempt to subvert and they convince you and they, this is just Duncan dealing with this like vast store of knowledge, unlike anything anyone else has ever had. Debatably more than some Bene Gesserit with their full other memories intact. This is crazy. And I don't think we're only now seeing this, and we're going to have to keep reading to find out kind of what happens with this. But it's crazy. It's really, really crazy. Yeah.
It's a huge, huge development. Very cool stuff. Duncan, motherfucking Idaho. Duncan, motherfucking Idaho. Duncan, motherfucking Idaho.
All the way down.
It's a Russian doll of Duncan motherfucking Idaho.
All the way down, yeah.
Okay, well, that's our takeaway for today, an exploration of Duncan here.
Yeah.
Let's take another quick breather, folks. We're almost to the finish line of today's episode, but we have a platter of freshly baked morsels for you. So stick around. You're going to want to take a bite of these. We'll see you in a minute.
Indeed, we will. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're in the mood for a couple of morsels. We got them for you, and they're nice and big, nice and juicy. The first morsel I'm going to share today is The Many Moons of Gamu. And in today's reading, Lucilla provides us some, she basically takes note, right, of the many moons in the night sky above Gamu, and hits us with this beautiful bit of background world building, because that's no moon. To quote another famous sci-fi franchise, that's no moon, that's a Death Star. No, it's a no ship battle fortress thing. Quote, fortress no ships. Some of them had been placed by Teg, but she glimpsed lines of new ones sharing the guardian role. They appeared to be about 4 times the size of the brightest stars, and they often traveled together, which made their reflected light useful but erratic, because they moved fast, up across the sky and below the horizon in only a few hours. She glimpsed a string of 6 such moons through a break in the clouds. End quote. Really fascinating stuff. Ultimately, we get a sense of the scale of the planetary defense that Teg's put into position, but also the idea of these hulking, invisible to all like forms of radiation and sonar and radio and prescience and all these things. These massive fortress ships just floating in space. Really fascinating, really beautiful, interesting background world building. But I also want to point out, I was in France, and we saw Starlink satellites being passing. Have you seen this before?
No.
It's hard to see in New York because we don't get a lot of light, but we were out in the countryside in central France, and it was just, imagine like a satellite crossing the sky, right? Where it's just like a single dot that's going boop, 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 boop. but it was like 14,
Oh, wow.
all in a perfect line going across the sky. And I had like a primal animalistic fear. I was like, oh my God, are we being attacked by something? And then I had to Google it, and it was like, oh, that's just what it looks like when a Starlink array goes by. And I was like, what the actual fuck? That's crazy. So in 2025, when we have something like that, these sort of like fast moving straight line of man-made orbiting objects, this sounds familiar to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I experienced in central France last year.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. Frank wrote this book in the 80s. So I wanted to take a step back considering that. At first I was like, when were the first satellites sent up? I want to take a step back. Let's just talk about satellites for a second. The first satellite sent into Earth's orbit was the Sputnik in 1957, which is interesting. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So there were satellites in space when Frank was writing these books.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the UCS satellite database, as of May of 2023, there are 7,560 satellites in orbiting Earth. Now, today, a couple of years later, Starlink alone has 6,000.
Oh, wow.
So I think that number is quite a bit higher than it was back in 2023. Now, in 2021, there was a Slovakian doctor, Miroslav, I think this is Kochifai, I think is how you pronounce it, published a letter to the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society journal warning of the issues caused by these growing numbers of orbiting planetary bodies that we keep putting out into space. And from the abstract highlights, quote, an approximately 10% increase over the brightness of the night sky determined by natural sources of light, end quote.
Wow.
So they're talking about more light being reflected and refracted back to Earth because of all these extra bodies that are in space, whether they are actually putting out light or they're just reflecting light from the sun. Very interesting. And the whole paper, the letter is very interesting. It talks about like migratory birds are kind of fucked up by having extra light in the sky. And there are things in nature that are kind of being messed with by us having all of this. Plus,
Oh, wow.
high altitude observatories who their entire purpose is to help us get off this planet and understand the cosmos better are having trouble because there's more and more things that are adding to the light pollution of near Earth orbit. So all in all, it was a very fascinating read. I kind of happily tumbled down that rabbit hole earlier.
Mm-hmm.
While Frank couldn't have known that we were going to end up here with these sorts of things actually happening in our night sky, I do think, considering his ecological interests, this would be something that Frank would write about or would have feelings about. So I thought it was interesting to talk about today. And
Yeah, wow.
for those of you who are hoping that this connects back to Dune, here's my little olive branch. The next time you go outside into the night sky and you see a passing satellite, just imagine that passing satellite is 4 times bigger than it is. And that is what it's like to be on Gamu.
Wow. Now I really want to see like a Starlink chain in the sky. I feel like it would be freaky. I feel like I would have the same
scary.
reaction that you did.
I was like waiting for impacts across the horizon.
Yeah.
You know? But it was, you can look up video of it. You can look up pictures and people time lapse it and stuff like that. It is very surreal because it looks like stars or shooting stars, but they're perfectly in a line and they're moving quite noticeably.
All right, let's talk about morsel number 2, dual bonds. So in today's reading, we get this ludicrously long paragraph detailing the Ixian dual bonds in the windows at Dara's Blot in this penthouse. Quote, they were flat black slats 10 molecules wide and rotating in a transparent liquid medium. Set automatically, the best Ixian dual bonds emitted a predetermined level of light without much diminishing the view. End quote.
Oh my God, get those into my apartment right now. That sounds great.
I know, like that sounds like the best blinds ever. Thank you, Ixians. It's tough to break away from the Ixians, you know, they make such great
They make such good shit. Sharper Image on Planet X is fucking awesome.
So a quick search through all the books reveals that dual bonds is not a word we've come across before in the Dune saga.
Yeah.
And this seems to be yet again another piece of technology that we can thank the Ixians for creating. Thank you, Ixians. Don't you be fucking with any hunter seekers that are automated to kill.
Don't do biological hunting. Don't stop.
So, put simply, And based on this description, dolbans appear to be just some sort of advanced form of light filtering that are installed into the walls of Dar es Balat, or into the windows of Dar es Balat, that allow sort of like the full color spectrum of light to pass through, but reduce harmful exposure that might actually damage the goods that are in the museum, right? We don't want any of the precious objects of the God Emperor to wear down because of light pollution or UV rays or anything like that. Now, I too fell down a bit of a research rabbit hole because I was fascinated by this. This is a real practice that museums do today, of course, right? Museums are extremely cautious with how much and for how long objects are exposed to light.
Right.
And I was curious what exactly the parameters, are there like rules around this? And the answer turns out to be, yes, there are very specific parameters around this. I ended up on the nonprofit website for the Conservation Center for Art and Historic Artifacts, CCAHA. And they have a helpful guide on their site with recommendations on how to light precious artifacts in your museum. And I just want to rattle off a couple of like fun facts that I found interesting that stood out to me. In case there's any museum heads out there trying to kickstart a museum, here's what you got to know.
I'm going to take a break from trying to kickstart this museum and listen to my favorite Dune podcast. Oh my God, thank God.
Oh my God.
Oh my, it's so
right,
useful.
we're speaking to that one listener who's like, holy fuck, I'm in.
Holy shit.
Okay, some fun facts from KKKH, the Conservation Center for Art and Historic Artifacts. UV light, turns out, is more harmful than visible light. I guess that makes sense if I think about it logically. And so UV light should be filtered as much as possible, down to 0 to 10 microwatts. Like get it down to 0 if you can, but whatever. Do what you can to get it as low as possible. The absolute maximum before it becomes harmful to the artifact, apparently, is 75 microwatts. That's where UV light becomes detrimental. More sensitive objects should be lit around 50 to 100 lux. Lux is a measurement of light, depending on the material that the artifact is made of. And there was this like really interesting like chart that showed like if you have an artifact that is made of paper, this is the lux level. This is how long it can blah, blah, blah. And so, for example, like if you have a work of art that was made on paper, you want the light lux level that it sits under to be 50. And you want that piece of art rotating in and out of the exhibition. You don't want it sitting under that 50 lux light for an extended number of days, weeks, or months without rotating it out.
Okay.
So constant exposure is also bad. I found that interesting. There was other stuff, whether if it's paint or acrylics or whatever, different measurements, different amounts of time that it can be out there. I also found it interesting that this nonprofit strongly recommends that every museum has a schedule for regularly monitoring the light that all of their pieces are under, and also keeping, basically like bookkeeping, like keeping records of like this date, this much light, this date, this much light, so that you can properly measure and maintain very delicate artifacts that you don't want to lose because of damage via light. I found it super fascinating. This was a much more extensive document, and I fell down a rabbit hole as well, but those are just 3 quick facts that kind of stood out to me and were interesting. And honestly, I really hope someone out there invents Ixian dolbans, because it sounds like
hell yeah,
museum curators and museum workers are working their asses off so I can go look at the Constitution and go, meh, and walk away.
Yeah. You said this is what, 300 years? That's not that old. Do they have a cafe fucking here? I'm thirsty. I don't like.
Right.
What are we doing?
The souvenirs here suck. God damn it! And the poor slaving worker is like updating the light bookkeeping.
We spent 6 minutes in 0.5. Yeah, what an ungrateful. Man,
I'm certainly going to be a little more appreciative of the way the lights are set up at the next museum I go to after having learned this.
I'm going to go the other direction. I'm just going to bring a UV lamp with me.
Blasted.
It's 360-degree protection of UV light. Oops. Can't see it.
Leonardo da Vinci's notes are like catching fire. You're like,
who could say what's causing this? Well, folks, that is our episode. Those are our morsels, our takeaway, our summaries. We have some homework for you, though, for the next episode. You are going to want to make sure you've read through chapter 45, the one that ends on the sentence, quote, "The rest of you, get your weapons and let's go." End quote.
Holy shit. I'm in.
I'm fucking in. Let's do it. I don't know what we're doing.
The end of this book is like pedal to the metal. I can't wait.
Oh, I'm so excited.
We're in the home stretch now, folks.
We got 2 more episodes, right? And then we're done with the book. It's crazy.
Yeah. All right, folks. That's our episode today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Before we let you go, a couple of quick reminders. As always, the 2 best ways to support this show are to become a patron. That's also how you can tune in live, like our lovely folks in the chat watching. And to grab yourself some Dune-themed swag from our merch store. Those links will be in the show notes below. So check them out, please.
Indeed. And we love to hear from you. So email us at gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts, your questions, your cute pets. In particular, I'd love to hear if you think that the sex scenes in this book are like clinical, weird, not sexy, or are you like, oh, hot dog, let me read it another 4 times during some private time with a locked door. I want to know. I'm curious. Is this too clinical? I think that's an interesting thing, and I'd be interested to hear people's takes. So email us, gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com. That's where we're located. That's how emails work.
That's how emails work.
Meanwhile, John Curtis said, "Tanks for the memories." Totally making light of the axolotl tanks, and I'm here for it. That's so funny.
I will say the jokes in the chat have been distracting in the best way possible.
Absolutely.
I keep looking over and being like, don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh. Leo's talking, don't laugh. Well, friends, there is no real ending. It's just the place where you stop the recording. But this podcast is always one step beyond logic, so help spread the word of Muad'Dib and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Lore_Party. We're also on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, whoever controls the podcast controls the universe. We'll see you on the golden path.